when there is a difficulty with any funding, that's our pickup point, is our members. The strongest, it's always our silent card, our trump card, and it's the organisation's trump card. They've got a massive, it's 150 members at the moment, and that's a significant amount of people. I think and I'm not sure of this fact, but I think it's like it takes 300 people to vote in a councillor. There's 15 councillors in Galway. So, you've got half the vote for a councillor right there. And so there's a voting bloc, and it can get political, and it can get, but it also means that there's more networks, and there's more people, there's more possibilities for social networking in a lateral way. And so more benevolent kind of gifts and offers can be pointed towards that organisation, which can help out and be benevolent to a kind of more general visual arts fabric. Sure, it's not lined up, it's not joined up thinking, so it can be very difficult, and something can be lost through the cracks very quickly, in that respect. But it's very fortunate in Cavan that you have that from the council. I mean, Art Space has 5 studios in a building called Black Box, and that's owned by the council, and it's like this is probably the most permanent kind of space there is. So there's 5 studios in Galway with a massive demand for studios. People, there's a huge population. There's people returning from LCAD in Cork and Limerick, and then there's also the graduates that come out of GMIT in the Burn. And so there's a massive demand, and the state is there's only 5 permanent-ish studios in Galway. I think it's scandalous in some respects that it's artist-led. That Jim and Aideen have taken upon themselves to provide or to push forward or put on the agenda, the council agenda, the need for a municipal gallery. It opens up a whole lot of questions, critical, reflective questions in respect to, Pandora's box. Yeah. So, in respect to what you've described there with the studios and that, I suppose it's an ideological position and it's a value system that comes through the council, and it's really important that, and it's just quite benevolent to a very. In order to have a buoyant scene, people need a place to congregate, really a space to work in and to talk. And if that can be provided by unused council buildings, everybody's a winner. And I think they're culturally in Galway, and specifically, it's very difficult for landlords to relinquish kind of responsibility, unfortunately. They see this as, a threat to ownership, squatting, and all that kind of stuff, and damage. And I think these things are kind of gathered baggage, which just needs to be deconstructed, and sort of an enlightened kind of view taken on it. That there is a real benefit for both business, as part of tourism. People come. I was struck yesterday, there was no art gallery. I asked somebody in Cavan, is there an art gallery? And they were like, this is Cavan. And I was like, okay. But you have a great church, you have an amazing church. I'm going to go to church tomorrow, 10 o'clock. It's such an amazing building.
We have an art gallery. Okay. It went with the Catholic Tiger.
Okay, that's really unfortunate. Because, I think when people get to a place, it's kind of certainly how I locate myself, but I know that people who aren't artists necessarily also kind of find their way to museums and galleries as a way of kind of taking some stock as well, space. That's that space where they can reflect and take a minute. They're not in cafes, and they're not being hit by advertising, and they're not being, disorientated. They can find a little space for themselves. In some respects, we're semi-institutional. We're not completely institutional. We get it's a quirky kind of grey area because we're artist-led, and we get funding from essentially the government, which is the Arts Council, through the Arts Council, which is really important. And we're very grateful for that, obviously, for programming. And we then hope and wish and say a lot of prayers to the local council to understand this goodwill coming from Dublin down to Galway, and then to reciprocate that on a local level to give us that funding for the space, for the rent of the space, to allow that programming to take off and flourish. I think there's a history of ownership. We own. I mean, a lot of people buy their own houses. You know, it's ingrained in us to own land, to own our houses, to have ownership, and that's fine. But and obviously for lots of reasons, and good ones at that. But I think in respect to a creative kind of environment, to create that, I think that needs to loosen off a bit. And that question of ownership needs to be kind of lessened. Grips need to be released from organisations. And this understanding of it is, you know, everybody's money that's funding this. And you're only a caretaker for a certain amount of time. And nobody's really, you know, unless you're a really good politician, nobody's going to build you a statue. You know, when you come to the end of your days, this is, you know, it's temporary, and we're trying to create, well, you know, the hope is, I suppose, and personally, the hope is that it's beneficial to a lot of people.